approved. Next item is Mr. Glassman.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is item number 26, the request to authorize closure of Banco Popular and Union Bank accounts. We do have one speaker card.
Okay, yes, we do, and it's from Mr. Larry Salazar. Sure, absolutely. Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Kosmont.
Yes, the staff report is actually to authorize closure of 2 bank accounts that have probably become more famous than they needed to, but they are bank accounts in which we have residual dollars that have been collecting interest, and there is no active purpose for those accounts now, so they should be closed with their interest earnings and moved into the mainstream bank accounts of the city. So the recommendation specifically is to close the Banco Popular account. That balance is about $238,000, as well as the Union Bank account, and that balance is about $5,500. And that would be the request that staff is making of the council tonight. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't at least provide for a couple minutes the background behind these accounts. Since we started here in May, obviously, Mr. Biggs and myself have been focusing on a number of financial issues, and we've disclosed every one of those as we get to them to the public and to the council. Many have been directed by the council because they were residual issues like these 2 bank accounts, which evidently surfaced, I think, in the early spring of 11 in a series of articles and letters claiming that there was some significant mismanagement of the monies and a lack of tracking of the dollars, and ultimately even some mispayments, a double payment of about $1 million. And so, finally, and the newspapers had been calling us and said, asking when we could, as a staff, get to identify these issues and clarify them as much as we could. So we ultimately, after the June approvals of the fiscal recovery plan, the financial recovery plan, and the budget, started to really hone in on these 2 accounts. And then we produced a report about a week ago, which received a lot less coverage than of course, the original articles making all these claims of improprieties. In general, I would say of the 2 accounts, one is called the Union Bank account. It's really a series of accounts, and the other, the Banco Popular accounts. Our conclusion is that the monies that went through those accounts were used entirely for the purposes that those accounts were created. Our other conclusion is that in both cases, at the end of the day, they should have been tracked and reported on the city's mainstream financial system rather than getting the reports that they were getting from the bank that weren't being coalesced and tracked into the city's financial system. They weren't really off the books. When something's off the books, it's because no one can find them. These were not on the financial balance sheets, and they should have been, like any asset. But we were actually, the city was receiving reports, and so at that level, they were accounts that I think were, not administratively treated properly in the sense that they weren't on these financial reports, but they weren't exactly, accounts that were, hidden or off the books in an intentional way. And so that was one conclusion we came to. The genesis of the Union Bank account issue that the community seemed to focus on, and we were not here at the time, was the potential for about $1 million overpayment to a developer associated with a company or LLC called Prime Cut as related to an office and restaurant project. I think it's Mr. Atina, who I don't know, I think is the principal in that LLC. And the claim was that in this account, that again hadn't been placed directly on the financial reporting system, but the city had been receiving reports on, had somehow released about $963,000 twice, and so there was an overpayment. And then I think the hullabaloo, for lack of a technical frame, about this is because this particular account came from a redevelopment project area bond issue. And when you issue bonds, you put them in the hands of a trustee, and the trustee is like the master account holder. And the reason you have a trustee is because people like you and I might buy a $5,000 bond, a $1,000 bond, a $10,000 bond, and we're supposed to get paid. The funds that get purchased by the bonds, by our money as a bondholder, are supposed to be tracked. And the way that the prospectus on the bond issue deals with it says, Mr. and Mrs. Bond Buyer, whoever you are, whether you're an institution or an individual retiree, these are popular with retirees, we're going to put this money with the trustee, in this case was Bank of New York, and then the Bank of New York is going to invest these monies in ways that we're identifying in our statement. And when the disbursements for the project upon which the bonds were sold are due, let's say an office building or a restaurant, then the city, as the issuer, the redevelopment agency, is going to instruct the trustee to move money from one account, which is usually an investment account, to another account so that the use can be paid. So what happens is, what should be simple, there's a project over here, I'm the trustee, the person that deposited money with me has ordered me to pay that person. In real life, it would just be a simple transaction, A to B to C. Well, like many things in public finance, they're not that simple. What happens is this trustee has a very deliberate set of instructions that says you have to invest the money in treasuries or short-term notes, but they have to be of a certain quality because they don't want people at risk. Like, for example, we've seen the market drop hugely in the last couple of days. Trustees don't buy stocks. They buy treasuries. They buy daily notes. And so this trustee, Bank of America, Bank of New York, did that for us. And the city administrator at the time, and I think it was Mr. Torres, was the instructor, was the account rep for the agency. And so the monies got invested. For a while, they were invested with the Union Bank in a treasury. And then ultimately, a couple of years after the funds were received by the trustee and invested, there came in a series of instructions to start spending the money per the bond issue for these projects. And on a fateful day, on October 28th, 1999, the trustee made a clerical error. They got instructed to move $963,000 out of the treasury into a daily account so it could be sold, converted, and transferred ultimately into a project account of Mr. Atina's to reimburse or provide the monies for the project, prime cut. One problem. When they went to do the wire transfer, they put the wire transfer number on the wrong line. So when the corresponding bank got the instruction, they couldn't take it, send it back. 4 days later, the same exact instruction number, wire number, got resent through the system by Bank of New York. Same amount, same destination, same reason, totally appropriate. Just happened twice because the first time was a mistake. So it was a do-over. That was the rogue, renegade, off the book, illicit, illegal transaction that everybody wrote about back in February. That's it. I wish it could be more exciting, but that's it. The other account, Banco Popular, a little different, smaller account, that was originally established as a revolving loan program fund with redevelopment monies, and that's the commercial rehabilitation programs and business programs that the agency does. And those funds were managed properly. They went to a couple of different entities. You probably know them better than me, Melca, the Elks Club, and so on. So loans were made and payments were paid back by these various entities that receive these rehabilitation loans or business development loans or whatever the purpose would be. And that's what happens in a revolving loan program, which, by the way, was established in 1992. Well, somewhere along the line also, basically the HUD 108 programs, which have very similar uses, were also put through this account, also proper, and loans were made. And loans were paid back, And Banco Popular and the redevelopment agency or HUD monies were used as the funds to make these various loans to businesses such as Gene Roberts and others. In tracking, and again, the issue with that account is that it was a mystery account because it wasn't on the financial reporting sheet of the balance sheet. Okay, fine. But beyond that, as we went and looked through it, those were the activities. And there are a number of transactions in there. The one thing we did find is that in one of the cases, there were payments made by one of the companies that received a loan who ultimately went out of business and stopped paying, and the redevelopment agency kept reimbursing HUD for those payments. Now, that is a totally legitimate use for a redevelopment agency to reimburse for commercial applications and commercial loans such as that. But there could have been a number of different ways that we might have done that instead of using the redevelopment money, but that would have been one of the sources we would have considered. Again, our conclusion is that, again, if we could roll the camera back, I think Mr. Biggs and I and Ms. Schuyler also would say that we would rather have kept the RLP revolving loan fund in one program, in one account, the CDBG monies in another, but they were all for the same purpose, and luckily the business that was stopped paying, that the agency started paying for, was also in a project area. So all of that fit together. But we would have probably identified those accounts differently, and certainly in all these cases, we would have put these accounts on the mainstream balance sheet so that no one could say, you know, they're missing, they're mysterious, they're rogue, whatever. So those would be creative. I mean, these are one of the things that I've been saying to all of you, that when you go into our financing system, you know, you're really, you know, you kind of need a stiff drink, because it just, there's a lot of things that go on. You go, what? You know, and we're fixing those things. And this is one of those whats, but were they illicit, illegal? No, we didn't find that. So again, the other recommendation, which is to move the money that's left there, about the $238,000, collecting interest, the activity's pretty much done. It should be moved to the mainstream account. It's part of our, you know, these HUD programs are part of our cleanup with HUD, and we're improving those administrative issues as well. We don't have to tell you, because you read the newspapers, there have been a series of issues related to the CDBG monies and the tracking of each one of these loans and whether or not the recipient was truly eligible. We agree they have to be fixed. We're responding to HUD. We've already responded. We have an action plan, and that's going well. They're very receptive for that. Can't fix it all in a day, but we're working on it. But this one just really also needs to be closed out, moved into the mainstream. So that's back to the original staff report. That's what we're recommending. So 2 accounts should have been on the financial reporting, weren't. Money spent proper, 1 clerical or transfer error, 1 overlap in purpose set of errors in the CDBG RLP account. But at the end of the day, the money's moved through these accounts, were all done properly, and the claims of impropriety on the prime cut Atina transaction just are simply wrong. It's simply a clerical error, a transfer error that got cleaned up with a follow-on transaction within about 72 hours. And the Banco Popular just should have been closed, segregated better, but the money's still there and the interest is being earned, and it just needs to be put back into a mainstream account. So our recommendation stands is we'd like the authorization to move these accounts back into the mainstream. We'd like the community to know that you know, we're confident at this point that as much work as this has taken, we probably haven't, you know, unearthed every square inch of this, but, you know, when you get through this in the detail that we have, we feel very good about the fact that while things always, as we find with the financial systems here in Montebello, could be done cleaner, better, the improprieties that were claimed just simply are not right and shouldn't have been. And that's the recommendation. Mr. Biggs, you may want to add something to this, but.